Welcome to this explainer. Look, let's be honest. Have you ever felt like corporate risk management is just this chaotic nightmare of endless spreadsheets and compliance checkboxes? Well, you're certainly not alone. But today, we're going to uncover exactly how to flip the script. Let's look at how we can take the chaos of everyday operational threats and turn it into a highly controlled, measurable, competitive advantage. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, what is operational risk? Second, the anatomy of a risk. Third, the RCSA framework. And finally, a real-world case study on XYZ Life. But before we get into the heavy theory, I want to throw a very real scenario your way. What exactly costs a growing, highly successful life insurance company 8 crore rupees every single year in totally preventable losses? Keep that number in the back of your mind, because solving that massive financial leak is exactly what we're going to achieve by the end of our time together.
Section 1. What is operational risk? Its definition and scope.
So, the textbook definition, straight from the Basel Committee, states that operational risk is the risk of loss resulting from inadequate or failed internal processes, people, systems, or from external events. Now, the absolutely crucial thing here is the boundaries. This definition specifically includes legal risk, right? Because a lawsuit is usually the consequence of a failed process or human error. However, it deliberately excludes strategic and reputational risk. So if a company just makes a bad business choice or suffers bad PR, that's outside our scope today. We are focusing strictly on the internal engines of the business.
Okay, let's dive into what those engines look like in a life insurance context. When processes, people, or systems fail, the damage doesn't just stay neatly contained in one little silo. No, it blasts through every single department. You can totally see how a simple data entry error in underwriting can lead to mispriced policies down the line, or how a system outage in IT can completely halt policy administration. And ultimately, the whole shebang bleeds right into customer experience, driving up attrition. It's a completely connected ecosystem. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Risk. Cause, event, and consequence. Think of a risk materializing exactly like a domino effect. It always starts with a cause on the left. This could be people, processes, systems, whatever. That cause then triggers an event, which finally leads to a consequence, like a financial loss or a major customer dispute. Now, here is the absolute secret to operational risk management. You cannot catch the final falling domino. You literally can't control the event once it's already happening. You have to focus all your energy on stopping that very first domino from falling. You have to control the cause. And how exactly do we fight back and control those causes? Well, we use two main lines of defense. First up, preventative controls. These act like a shield. They target the likelihood of the cause ever even happening in the first place. Think of mandatory system fields or automated data validations. On the flip side, we have corrective and detective controls. These act more like a safety net. The event has already slipped through, and now these controls, like post-issue audits or early warning reports, are just trying to limit the impact of the consequence. Section 3. The RCSA framework. Risk Control Assessment.
So RCSA stands for Risk and Control Self-Assessment. It's basically a collaborative methodology where business units actually evaluate their own processes. It's a 5-step journey that takes all those vague corporate anxieties and turns them into a concrete action plan. Step 1, you identify the risks. Step 2, you assess the inherent risk. Step 3, you evaluate your existing controls. Step 4, you assess the residual risk, basically what's left over. And finally, Step 5, you build your action plan. Let's zoom in a little closer on Step 2. When we assess inherent risk, we're measuring the raw, unfiltered danger of a process before any safety nets or controls are even considered. It relies on a super simple but incredibly powerful equation. Risk equals likelihood multiplied by impact. So if a fraudulent claim has a high likelihood of slipping through and a massive financial impact when it does, well, your inherent risk score is going to be through the roof. Now, what I find genuinely fascinating here is the biggest trap in all of risk management. We call it the expert gap. In Step 3 of the RCSA, when you're evaluating your controls, you have to measure 2 dimensions. First, design effectiveness, which asks, is this control designed properly to stop the risk? But then there's operating effectiveness, which asks, do our people actually perform this control consistently and accurately in the real world? And this brilliantly illustrates a harsh reality. A control might look like an absolute masterpiece of design on paper, but completely fail in operating practice just because someone forgot to check a box.
All right, let's see this in action. Section 4, Case Study on XYZ Life and Implementing RCSA.
Let's set the scene here. XYZ Life is this fast-growing insurance company, but right now they are in absolute crisis mode. Remember that 8-core figure from the beginning of the explainer? Yeah, that's what they are bleeding annually to operational failures. Their death claim settlement process is just drowning in claims leakage, regulators are literally knocking on the door about control gaps, and customers are absolutely furious over turnaround delays. The stakes are huge, so the board steps in and mandates an immediate RCSA review.
First, the team maps out the claims process and scores the inherent risk. And wow, the raw danger is completely off the charts. Without effective safety nets, fraudulent claims score 15, which is categorized as high. Processing errors hit a 12, also high. And the risk of settlement delays? That's sitting at very high. Basically, they are incredibly vulnerable. But when they look at their existing defenses, they get a gritty reality check. They hit that expert gap we talked about, and they hit it hard. XYZ Life actually had controls in place. They had document checks and turnaround time monitoring, but because they were entirely manual and applied so inconsistently by the staff, their actual operating effectiveness was terrible. Document checks scored a weak 2 out of 5. TAT monitoring, also a weak 2.
So the RCSA process naturally forces them to summarize the root cause of this massive failure, and the diagnosis was crystal clear. Human error and manual checklists were the very things enabling that 8-core leakage. There was way too much reliance on manual controls, virtually zero automation, really weak accountability among the staff, and absolutely no real-time key risk indicators, or KRIs, to warn management when things were going off the rails. Armed with this new data, management completely pivoted. They moved from slow, reactive steps to a highly aggressive, automated action plan. Instead of manual verification, they brought in AI-based fraud detection to act as a 24/7 automated preventative control. Instead of relying on reactive reports to find delays, they deployed workflow automation with real-time alerts. Essentially, they built a modern automated shield to stop those very first dominoes from falling. And honestly, the data tells the story better than I ever could. Just 9 months after implementing this RCSA action plan, XYZ Life saw a staggering 35% reduction in fraud losses. By swapping out those weak manual controls for automated preventive ones, they literally stopped millions of rupees from leaking out of the company. But it wasn't just about the fraud. By automating their workflows, the process error rates were literally cut in half. And notice the massive impact on the customer here. The average turnaround time to settle a sensitive death claim was slashed from an unacceptable 12 days down to just 6 days. This dramatic shift in their overall risk profile concludes our case study perfectly. Look at this. Fraud went from high down to medium. Processing errors dropped from medium to low. Delays went from high to medium. This proves unequivocally that implementing a framework like RCSA isn't just some boring compliance exercise to keep regulators happy. No, it directly protects the bottom line and restores fundamental trust with the customer. Which leads us with a critical final thought for you to take back to your own desk today. As you'll see, brilliant design means absolutely nothing without operating effectiveness. So, if your organization's strongest controls are genuinely only as good as their daily human execution, what expert gaps are hiding in your organization right now? It's time to take a highly critical look. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go find those gaps before they find you.